So finance is kind of cut and dry. It's kind of like black and white. Essentially, I only chose finance because of the money you make coming out of college. And I know it sounds weird, but that's what a lot of college students do these days. It's like, we're going to choose a career because we don't know really what we want to do. So eventually I want to find my purpose and find what I want to do in my professional career other than, finance. So the change really happened when I wanted to be more creative. And I didn't see a sense of that in finance. In my prior job, I didn't see a sense of that. And I wanted to be more hands-on with my creativity and self-expression, making sure I express myself. So that's kind of why I switched to something that I felt like more people my age needed to do. And that's kind of find your purpose and find what you want to do, and find that aspect of like what makes me happy. So self-expression really made me happy, and it really made me understand that I needed to express myself in other ways other than, going to a job and, trying to find myself there. It's like, why you just won't create it? And I eventually created it, and it was like, okay, now that you created it, what will you do? And that's kind of how the tables turn. And I would say it's more of being yourself and more of changing your ways and making sure that you understand your purpose and understand what you want to do with your life. And I would say that it's an understanding of creativity, but also, becoming an artist, becoming somebody that can self-express themselves. So that's pretty much how the change happened. And I just see myself doing more things tended towards me and expressing myself because, another job couldn't do that. You have to create your own lane. You have to create your own way. And for me, that entrepreneurship was that way. So basically what happened was I woke up one day and I wanted to be more creative. And I actually worked on Areas One a year before I even started, before I even launched. And I would say I've never really had a particular eye on fashionable clothing. And it was because I always needed to do what my parents told me, which is you need to go to college, you need to find something, you need to find a career, you need to find a job, you need to do what any other student does and follow that lane. But I didn't really see that until I graduated and I saw the benefit that it could help other kids and help other people really express themselves. And really the company comes from growing up and not having those fashionable items and seeing that and saying, hey, even though I don't have it, I can create it. And when you create it, it gives you some sense of, pride, dignity. It gives you some sense of understanding yourself. So that's pretty much why I made the switch. And that's pretty much how I wanted to present my company and present myself and make sure that, other minorities, other people of color, they see that switch and they understand that even though you don't have the money, even though you don't have the creative mind, even though you don't have what's necessary right now, you can have it in the future. Most definitely. So my education in finance gave me the opportunity to understand about investing, about understanding my company and its finances. So basically looking at my company as a whole, the ownership of my company, but also looking at the valuation of my company. Eventually, when I do have a valuation, but understanding that eventually we'll get to a point where I need to finance my company. I need to build a line of credit. I need to understand that there will be investors, but also how much money do I need to start my company? Finance really taught me that even though you don't have the money at the time, maybe saving it in personal finance, saving it in your savings account and understanding that you can save the money and invest it in yourself, it can all work out that way instead of taking a chunk and saying, hey, I want to sell this percentage of my company and, losing that percentage yourself. So finance really, really helped me in understanding my finances and understanding my books and accounting and how necessarily that works. So I can run my company from that aspect, but also a creative aspect. So a couple of roadblocks that I've faced so far, I would say the number one thing is patience. And what I mean by patience is I enter a super competitive market. The fashion industry is super competitive. There's so many people that do it, but also it's competitive on the aspect of being a minority in a super competitive market. Is it's not many resources that we can obtain to create. Like a lot of people a lot of people of color don't understand that, you know, it's a manufacturing process. It's a marketing process. Also, it's a process of design, cut, and pattern. And those resources, particularly from Chattanooga, you don't have them. You know, being from Chattanooga, we don't have many creative outlets, especially in design and fashion. So I really seen that, and it was really a roadblock for me, and it still is, of that patience and also getting out there to sell to that consumer market. That the same consumer markets are, you know, Gucci, Louis Vuitton, all these other markets in a price aspect. So I say that was the number one roadblock for me to understand. So basically, the company was started from not only me not having fashionable items, but my brother as well, my older brother, us growing up together. You know, just not having things that necessarily we needed to be fashionable. We would get teased. You know, you didn't have you didn't have the newest clothes, you didn't have the newest shoes, and I wanted to create a self-expression of that. So Aries One is basically the end of my brother's first name and the end of my first name. So the end of his first name is Aries, and the end of my first name is Juan. So it's kind of how I came up with the name, and I understand it. It was like it's a family thing, and I understand that family and the self-expression, we always had it, but now we're putting it more towards a business, and me understanding that I want to live on that legacy and put my brother's legacy first. So that's kind of how I came up with the name. 2021, I want to tend more towards being more creative and growing. And that means that I want to bring more people in, but it also means that I want to tend more towards telling a story. With my collection one, it was called Dream, and collection two will also release this year. It's called Vision, and that will release in September. And I also released, you know, some shoes this year called Taka Highlights. And I think that, you know, in 2021, we want to tend more towards also highlighting other creators with our magazine. It's called Inspired Fashion. And it's basically telling the story of other creators to make sure they get the highlight and make sure they get get noticed, I would say. So tending more towards that, but also tending more towards the community. I'm a big community guy, and understanding that community come first. And that's what the basis of my organization is tending more towards creative, you know, ideas and creative ways in the Chattanooga community. So maybe give it back some with my creative branch called SCABA, which is, you know, it stands for Sustainable Creativity Becomes Art. And it's basically giving back towards, you know, young kids and making sure that they understand that it's okay to express yourself. It's okay to understand that right now you don't know what to do, but eventually maybe you want to go into design and fashion. I know that's big for a lot of minorities these days, especially in Chattanooga, in the community I grew up in. I would say my advice is don't act like or don't feel like you have to figure it out right away. It's very hard to get a job out of college, especially it's a pandemic now. So it's very hard to understand your purpose, to understand where you want to go, but understand that time tells all. Time will tell you that, you know, your purpose is this. You have to, it's trial and error for everything. So make sure that that trial and error, you understand your mistakes. You understand necessarily what you want to do. Do you want to express yourself in this way or that way? So let the time tell necessarily how you go about your career and go about your professional life. So that's my advice, but also make sure that you do something that you love and you do something that you can give back to others. So that would be my advice to any other students, but also students who are about to graduate.